But this is just the point. Okay, whenever we are talking about facts, certain opinions must be excluded. That is what it is to have a domain of expertise. That is what it is for knowledge to count.
It's not that people distrust pointy heads and intellectuals and eggheads. That's part of American culture. And actually, let me say that I actually think it's a very positive part of American culture. Tocqueville noticed it. Other scholars over the centuries, the decades and the centuries have written about American culture have noticed that Americans really are sort of skeptical, self-reliant people who rely on their common sense, which is, I think, part of what built our greatness as a country. That's not the kind of thing I'm talking about. We've gone from a healthy skepticism about experts to something different. We've gone to a kind of epidemic of narcissism where we all think we can replace experts. Well, we all think that what experts do can't be that hard, and we could probably do it better ourselves. And we've seen it not just in the United States, but we saw in the Brexit debate where the Brexiteers were saying, experts, who needs experts? We had a campaign where the winner and the current president of the United States said, who needs experts? What if I didn't have them? Would that be so bad?
The irony, from my perspective, is that the only people who seem to generally agree with me and who think that there are right and wrong answers to moral questions are religious demagogues of one form or another. And of course, they think they have right answers to moral questions because they got these answers from a voice in a whirlwind. Okay, not because they made an intelligent analysis of the causes and condition of human and animal well-being. And in fact, the endurance of religion as a lens through which most people view moral questions has separated most moral talk from real questions of human and animal suffering. So one thing to notice is that we do something different when talking about morality, especially secular academic scientist types. When talking about morality, we value differences of opinion in a way that we don't in any other area of our lives. So for instance, the Dalai Lama gets up every morning meditating on compassion, and he thinks that helping other human beings is an integral component of human happiness. On the other hand, we have someone like Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was very fond of abducting and raping and torturing and killing young women. Most Western intellectuals look at this situation and say, well, there's nothing for the Dalai Lama to be really right about, or for Ted Bundy to be really wrong about, that admits of a real argument that potentially falls within the purview of science. Okay, that he likes chocolate, he likes vanilla. There's nothing that one should be able to say to the other that should persuade the other. Now notice that we don't do this in science. On the left, you have Edward Witten. He's a string theorist. If you ask the smartest physicists around, who's the smartest physicist around, in my experience, half of them will say Ed Witten. The other half will tell you they don't like the question. What would happen if I showed up at a physics conference and said string theory is bogus? It doesn't resonate with me. It's not how I choose to view the universe at the smallest scale. I'm not a fan. Nothing would happen because I'm not a physicist. I don't understand string theory. I'm the Ted Bundy of string theory. Okay? I wouldn't want to belong to any string theory club that would have me as a member. Okay, but this is just the point. Okay, whenever we are talking about facts, certain opinions must be excluded. That is what it is to have a domain of expertise. That is what it is for knowledge to count. How have we convinced ourselves that in the moral sphere there is no such thing as moral expertise, or moral talent, or moral genius even? How have we convinced ourselves that every opinion has to count? How have we convinced ourselves that every culture has a point of view on these subjects worth considering? Does the Taliban have a point of view on physics that is worth considering? No. Okay.
What was different to me was not that people were doing the kind of thing they were doing to me, say, 30 years ago. When I first came here to Washington and I was working on, it shows you how long ago it was, I was working on Soviet issues, which apparently I'll be working on again. But, understandably, during the Cold War, people would say, listen, I want to talk to you about this because I don't want you lunatics to blow us all up. I'm scared. I think, here's what I think we should do. I want to be involved in this. I understood that. What's different now is that when I tell people, well, I'm a specialist on Russia, the reaction I get is this. You're a Russia expert? Let me tell you about Russia. That no matter what the subject, I watched this happen to other experts. And as I started writing, and I did this first version of the blog and then the article and so on, people were coming to me with these kinds of stories. You're a lawyer? Let me explain the Constitution to you. Oh, you're a doctor? Here's some things you ought to know about germs. And it was just going on and on and on. And I started to wonder what had happened that had turned us all into this. And my touchstone early in the book, I mentioned the immortal character from Cheers, Cliff Clavin, the mailman. Cheers was about a bar in Boston, and every bar had a know-it-all. There's always a guy at the end of the bar who was always sitting there and saying, it's a known fact, right? And everything was premised with, studies have shown it's a known fact. Okay, every bar had that guy. What strikes me now is we're all that guy. We've all turned into this. We're all constantly lecturing each other on lecturing each other on each other's area of expertise. You're an electrician? I have some thoughts on that. You're an airline pilot? How hard can that be? And I started to worry about it because it's gone from a skepticism about knowledge and experts to an aggressive rejection of expertise. And if that happens, not only is our welfare endangered as people, I mean, that means that people don't get their vaccinations. It means that people, don't listen to their lawyers and they end up in jail. It means people end up broke, unhappy, whatever it is. It also means that the foundations of our democracy as a republic are in danger. Because we are not a democracy. We are a republic. And we rely on delegating decisions to other people who we assume are going to have some better knowledge of these issues than we are, or than we do. And those elected representatives have to rely on experts. I was an aide to a U.S. senator. In the morning, it's childcare. In the afternoon, it's nuclear weapons. And by dinner, it's urban policy. And there have to be people to get those guys. Now, congressmen, other decision makers, they can become experts in their field. My late boss was actually really probably his own best expert on elderly issues after years and years of working on those issues. But by and large, our republic functions on delegated decisions to others who rely on expertise to help make the best decisions we can make. If we reject that, then we just turn into a kind of an Athenian marketplace where we all have a plebiscite every day and we can change our mind at any given moment. I'll tell you that when it comes to Brexit, for example, as somebody who's primarily a conservative by nature, and I mean a small c conservative as well, in that I don't like sudden change, I don't like large muscle movements in a republic without a lot of consideration. I thought it was really, although I didn't like the European Union when it was born, because by my nature, I also didn't like big transnational bureaucracies that were going to tell people what to do. On the other hand, I didn't think that the way that you got out of that was to make a decision based on 51% of whoever showed up that day. And I think it's important to remember that our system of government is built specifically to prevent that. It was designed never to allow that to happen. And so when people say, well, we can't listen to the experts, we just have to do this ourselves and do this en masse with, the people speaking as a whole. Well, that is fundamentally, to my mind, an un-American approach to the way we're governed, because our system of government was designed not to do things that way. Well, a couple of things about this. First of all, is it new? I think it is. I think that so. But I think it's gotten worse. I think that this streak has always been there. I opened the book with a quote by Isaac Asimov, who talks about the cult of ignorance in American society. Well, Asimov said that in 1980. But what's different, I think, is this replacement of experts. It's not just people arguing with their doctors. It's people saying, I've been on Google, I'm a doctor too, or I'm as smart as a doctor. There are a lot of causes for this, and I identify three in the book that I wanted to talk about in particular. The role of higher education, which is supposed to at least cure some of this and is actually making it worse. The role of the media, which I think has well, I'll talk about that in a moment, but that the media has essentially become an entertainment complex rather than an information vehicle. And finally, the thing that everybody thinks is responsible for this, the internet. But I think it's very, very important to note, I don't blame the internet for the situation we live in now. I think the internet put all of this on steroids. I think it made it a lot worse because, again, we can all sit at that bar and say, well, as I happen to know right here, the galactic answer machine that's almost always wrong because you've asked it the wrong question. But this predates the accessibility of the internet. This notion of students lecturing back to their teachers, for example, one of my favorite things, really. Professor, there's a few things you should think about. Oh, well, please, tell me. That predates the internet. About expertise has reached ridiculous proportions because people are looking for any loophole that lets them out of having to listen to experts. And I think that's very dangerous. But I think that experts have played into that by withdrawing from the public sphere and saying, you know what? It's too difficult to talk to all of you, so we're just going to talk to each other in that weird jargon and specialized language that we experts used and just stop talking to the public. So I